This is the sports universe. Within it exist numerous constellations, but perhaps the strangest, one that all sports have recently turned their gaze to, exists right here. This is the constellation of college football. Like any realm, there were issues in this constellation, but it was a place that was treated differently, a natural preserve of sorts, a place that didn't operate with the same free market laws as other sports leagues. Society had kind of carved this corner of the galaxy off with the intent of preserving rather than developing. And for decades, humanity admired this constellation, a sacred destination with big and small worlds, each existing and evolving with their own unique communities over time.
The real traditions, the joy of continuity, you find that in the college game.
That is, until recently.
$1 billion media rights.
In the watershed moment of collegiate athletics and football. College football is completely different.
To understand this, we need to head to a small, little-known world.
As one heads east in the great state of Washington, the green fades to brown, the gray to blue. And just as the colors change, so do the colleges. Coors versus wine and cheese, yachts versus RVs. Pullman, Washington is a tourist town, and that might surprise you. Nothing about it seems touristy. Surrounded by wheat fields, no resorts, beaches, mountains in sight, it makes no sense that a town of 8,000 full-time residents will quadruple regularly in the fall.
None of this makes sense. That is, of course, if you don't know much about college football.
For many, college football is more about the cathedrals. 8 of the 10 biggest stadiums in the world were built for this game. Of course, as WSU shows, not every team is like that.
College football is not immune from politics or financial motivation.
TV networks noticed. They thought these big boys should play each other more often. Lucrative offers were made. Big teams ditched regionality for realignment and restructure. More games like Michigan versus UW.
Two schools 2,000 miles apart. There's not really any tradition between UW and Michigan, but millions will watch. So it's a better product, right? This is where college football is really, really weird. And this weirdness supersedes all other sports weirdness. And my realization of this came the other day when an Australian friend asked me a very surface level question. Why do people care about college football? All the best players are just in the NFL. Such a simple question that forced me to pause. Wait, why do I care? And many fans will ask themselves this question when they get too caught up in watching a bunch of random dudes play some random game, screaming at the TV, maybe losing a relationship in the process. But there really is something really unique about college football in comparison to the other big sports. They aren't the best players. Those guys play on Sundays. It's understandable to want to spectate the best of the best. That's a product you can sell. It's been sold many times. That's rational. What's not rational is watching a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds for 4 hours through 30-degree weather. That's just weird. For perspective, try and think of one comparable. Try and think of one sport that averages audiences like this for amateurs. The U20 World Cup, the other form of football, over 1 billion fans worldwide. The global sport. Average audience was 13,000. There were 120 football programs last year that averaged more than that for their entire season. This suggests that there is something unique with college football, at least up until this point.
So, if they don't have the best players, why is college football so popular?
Maybe if we go to the brightest minds at these colleges, like academics and administrators, we can find some answers. Take Carol Folt, the USC president. She has a doctorate in ecology. She worked as a researcher in biological sciences. Very smart individual. But do you see anything in her bio that shouts college football? Not even a ball.
After hitting this dead end, I hit the streets. I asked fans, why do you care about college football?
Getting together with family and friends.
Coming back home.
Everybody around me, family, friends.
Family, friends, and fireball!
It's a good community here.
To have fun and be together.
This is father, son?
Yep.
We used to come to a lot of mom and dad have passed, so it's like Dad said, it's the people. It always has been and always will be. The people.
Football equals community, which equals feeling good, which creates a feedback loop of sorts. In a world struggling with loneliness, sports like football remain as a catalyst for us to connect. A couple quick numbers from a book, Fans Have More Friends. The average non-fan has about 21 friends. The average dedicated sports fan, 35. They also have more social interactions, 454 versus 204. We're getting connection out of sports like football, and we crave that as humans.
Win or lose, Cougs booze.
With the advent of radio and television, media companies could broadcast games, and now this feedback loop was even more palpable. It became a bigger product. Fans didn't have to go to the game to get together. They could watch at their friend's house or a bar or a restaurant. This is a very good product. And the thing is, even when teams lose, people still win.
Okay, but we sports fans get this, so what's the problem? Well, who makes the decision? Ultimately, for big decisions like conference realignment, one person takes full responsibility, and that is the school president, who happens to be an academic.
Not a lot of presidents know a whole lot about the business because a lot of them come from the academic side. This comes directly from a former Fox Sports Network president who negotiated hundreds of these TV deals. To be fair, many of them will tell you they didn't realize how intertwined athletics would be. So why did USC leave, and who made this domino decision? I had a chance to speak with my favorite college football author who just released an in-depth book about this. 11-time Emmy Award winner
Armen Keteyian.
According to our reporting, Carol Folt, the president, really navigates the move to the Big Ten.
USC decided to leave and kind of blow up in the process a conference it had been in for about a century.
Why did they do this?
When they say it's not about the money, it's about the money.
A school with a $7.6 billion endowment that charges $340,000 for a four-year degree decided to turn its athletes into a traveling road show for more money. And more schools followed. This seems like a problem, but there are attempts and decisions being made like this in many different arenas, like the Super League in Europe. Maybe you view the USCs, Texas, the Oklahomas of the world as just making a business decision. It sucks, but it happens all the time in countless domains, and the world keeps spinning.
A major shift.
Well, short-term profit strategies aren't always long-term profit strategies, and for that, we need to go to the most valuable constellation in our sports universe, a paradoxical phenomena.
We're bringing you tonight the most spectacular showcase the league has to offer.
Throw, he's hit. Oh, he is nailed.
The NFL, the only program that feels like it owns 1/7 of our week, but this is a puzzling TV program because although it's run by hardcore capitalists, it is a socialist utopia. There is a salary cap, a salary minimum, a redistribution of wealth through the draft. None of that sounds capitalistic. Comparing it to the MLB or Champions League is laughable. The NFL is built on parity and fairness. All TV revenue distributed equally to all 32 teams, regardless of how big your fan base is, regardless of how good you do. The Cowboys and Panthers, they get the same cut. So how did it get this way?
The NFL was born out of industrial towns. Most Americans saw football as a spirited amateur endeavor. Purists believed that paying players violated football's essence. The league struggled. Teams folded left and right for 20 to 30 years.
This led to inequality, a lack of parity. There were 4 powerhouse teams: the Giants, Bears, Packers, and Redskins. This led to a seminal moment. Burt Bell, who was the owner of the Eagles, he couldn't get any of the good college players. They just go play for these good teams. So he went to the other owners with a proposal, a draft.
George Halas and Tim Marr looked at the plan, a plan they knew would undeniably hurt their teams, and thought, he's right. If we can't have a level playing field in people beating us, this is not going to be interesting. Marra and Halas signed on knowing it would hurt their team but improve the product of professional football.
Countless key moments like this, like Halas helping out his bitter rival, the Green Bay Packers, a small market team who was at risk financially. They were like a successful Silicon Valley startup. They kept putting the interests of the collective ahead of their own individual interests. Wildly competitive on Sunday, collaborative and innovative Monday through Friday. And eventually, this would lead to the most valuable league in all of sports. Obviously today, the NFL isn't some nonprofit enterprise. They seem to really have 2 relationships: a socialist relationship amongst the owners and a capitalist relationship with the fans. NFL Sunday Ticket, ticket prices in general, commercials, they're very much in the business of making money, and that's okay. But this unparalleled rise started with this forward-looking product-first vision. And if the early NFL was like Apple, college football is starting to feel a whole lot more like IBM.
Is Carol Folt or other university presidents thinking about the product of college football, or the university first?
So, what exactly is the product of college football? I mean, who are we to judge if this is a bad decision? It's not like they're getting rid of college football. They're just paying the big boys to play each other more often. What's wrong with that? There's never been parity, and as fans, we're just going to get better matchups now. I'll be right down.
A year ago,
I'll be right down.
I had a moment in the bathroom. More of a existential crisis. Oregon was playing the Washington Huskies just down the street. Many of my friends were Ducks, and everyone was gearing up for the walk over to the game. A buddy of mine asked if I wanted to wear a jersey. I said no. They said, come on, man. You grew up in Oregon, and it's the Huskies. I said, okay. I took the jersey to the bathroom, put it on, and I looked myself in the mirror. To the commercial world, my fandom was in free agency. My dad went to WSU. His dad went to WSU. So I grew up rooting for the Cougs, especially against the Huskies. The Cougs who were left behind in realignment. It was time to move on, and Oregon was a logical regional fit. No one would have questioned me. I could have just said I was from Oregon. They make pretty nice jerseys too. But I just couldn't. Even if I wanted to. I didn't grow up a Duck fan. So I took the jersey off and went neutral guy.
This is the beauty and product of college football. Distant, dim stars that collectively burn bright. Every sport has its dynasties, and those dynasties will naturally attract a much larger following. But what makes this sport special happens deep beneath the surface of the national title race, where fandom can't be bought.
If the NFL is 32 franchises desperate for the Lombardi, college football is over 100 fan bases desperate for thousands of unique made-up trophies, like just getting a win, taking down an SEC school, or beating the alma mater of their buddy down the street who just went there for graduate school. Come on, man.
The Duck friends that I have, they don't reminisce about the Pac-12 titles that they've earned. Instead, the most cited line is the 12 straight victories over UW.
If the NFL season is a linear march toward the Super Bowl, the The college football season is a staggering, sporadic lurch through a minefield of petty feuds, unpredictability, and tradition. A progressive duck fan base with a Disney character ripping a Harley? A more conservative Corvallis a few dozen miles away where they dress as literal duck hunters, shotgunning beer in camo overalls, pumping the stadium with chainsaw noises on third down. That's how they get down. As Jordan Kahn from The Ringer wrote, the sport is a window into hundreds of corners of the country most of us would never get to see, each with their own delightful absurdities. How do you think College Game Day became so popular?
Boise, Idaho. Home to a fairy tale about college football.
Would such a show make you smile if they were in Dallas for the 97th time talking about how big Jerry's World was?
Unfortunately, that is where it's headed. Game Day is going to Eugene tomorrow to cover the Ducks for the 12th time in about 20 years. They cover 2 more schools, 2,000 miles apart because, well, money. I'm sure it'll be an exciting matchup, and maybe I'm just wearing rose-colored glasses. I'm becoming who my father was, who his father was, a romantic of the past. Except, this is not a complaint. This is a horrific product decision, one that all major sports will be paying attention to. Recently, there was a Super League that was proposed, cutting the FBS level basically from 133 to 70 teams. That wasn't enough, apparently. Greg Sankey, who's the commissioner of the SEC, already came out and said, yeah, that's not happening, which means it's probably not happening. Instead, what's more likely is a further consolidation into roughly 25 to 30 teams in a more national football league. That sound familiar?
3 years, 5 years down the line, will you see a super conference? I think more likely than not.
There is very little chance that we're headed any direction other than the major conferences breaking away and doing their own thing.
These Super League teams will stand to gain a whole lot more media money because it would mean more media money and less teams to pay out. The big networks want this because it's bigger matchups filling precious real estate.
Every decision up until this point, it's indicated that these top programs will just continue to chase more money, even if it means cutting out others. But here's why I think that is going to lead to maybe a short-term bump in profit, but a long-term decrease in profit. By disenfranchising some football teams, their fan bases might just naturally lose interest. If Boise State is in a completely different football world than UW, their fans just might not care to watch as much. Not all college football fans are fans of the NFL. And some of these college football teams are becoming a whole lot more like the NFL without the key piece. They don't have the best players. Those guys are in the NFL. They're creating friction to the fan experience by stripping a significant portion of regionality away from the game. Last year I had 3 separate friend groups coming to town for UW games. I am not a UW fan, but because I grew up on the West Coast, a lot of my friends went to West Coast schools, and this was an excuse for us to get together. There is not a single game like that for UW this year because they don't really play as many teams around them anymore. What's a big game now? You won't really have as many 8-0s versus 8-0s if they go to a 30-team super conference because, well, there's so much parity, you'll probably have a lot more 5-3s versus 4-4s. That doesn't really feel as much like a big game, at least in the college sense. Fans of teams that are just left out, they might tune out because of just spite. People's beliefs run deep. The cutting of funding for FCS schools. Media companies aren't going to want anything to do with Portland State versus UW, but these FCS schools with these pay-for-play games make a third to half of their budget off of these games. Invariably, if you remove them, That means some of these FCS schools will have to fold their program, which means less people playing football, less people probably watching football.
Two things can be true at the same time. National primetime ratings can increase, and overall college football viewership can decrease. One of the touted points this year is the increase in national ratings, but are we truly surprised that Texas versus Alabama at 7 Eastern has huge numbers? The real comparison should be the totality of college football viewership. How many mid-market audiences, like Texas Tech and WSU's fan base, did these big teams lift up by playing them?
Here they come.
Viewership was just more spread out. Lastly, we need to tread carefully with ratings. If your only metric for product quality is TV ratings, how did you feel about Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson? I'm not saying this will kill college football, but rather we could be witnessing a Constellation Casualty. Every sport and business deals with its own pendulum of product and profit, and right now, the powers at play within the college football community are dropping an Acme anvil on the product. Baseball tried this, inadvertently. For years, America's pastime refused to adapt. Now, facing an age cliff of older fans, they are leaning more into the product by shortening the game. Why didn't baseball adapt sooner?
Oh, he's milking every step of it, isn't he?
Well, longer games meant more commercials.
Jimmy, pace of play.
Sometimes you have to leave a little on the table to improve or preserve the product. Baseball games had increased in length substantially over time, allowing for more ads, allowing for more money, but worsening the product. They changed this, and although some players and traditionalists might not like it, it appears to be working. It appears to be a better product. Because the top sports leagues are inherently monopolistic, they have more freedom to hurt the product without seeing the short-term ramifications. You can't just go watch another MLB like you can go buy another cereal. Instead, slowly over years, the casuals might find it less interesting than the alternatives. It's a slow poison.
Now, I don't want to just fixate on what's wrong with all this. What can be done? Well, let's start by acknowledging the elephant in the room. The Big Ten and the SEC, they control the destiny not just for football, but in a lot of ways for all of sports. So what should the Big Ten and SEC do? Look to the stars. Your product is the constellation. The Big Dipper stands out through its group, not through its brightest star.
For this, I present a working theory, one that restores the constellation through regional rivalries with player and fan enjoyment in mind. For the FBS, 7 conferences of 10 teams, everybody plays each other in their conference, 3 non-conference games. The 63 remaining teams will organize into a group of 4. And this group of 4 will have a 4-team playoff featuring the winner of each group of 4 conference. The winner of this group of 4 is a champion, and they will be given a bid to the CFP. Conferences will have their own media deals, and this will largely be distributed equally. To get the big boys on board, there will be bonuses each year to the top performing schools. For example, the schools that win their conference. This is subject to each individual conference's media negotiations. 60% of college football's playoff money is distributed to the Power 7, 15% to the Group of 4. The remaining 25% goes to the teams and players that participated through a revenue share.
Unfortunately, none of this is really possible without the SEC or Big Ten agreeing to do something they've been unwilling to. Take a smaller piece of the pie. Put the goal of the collective ahead of your own individual best interest, ahead of the media money grab. But if they don't, if they continue to squeeze as much commercialized juice as they can out of this product that is college football, they might be faced with the same problem that the NBA has been facing. It's not that basketball is a bad product.
A few months ago, I made a video detailing why the upcoming Olympics would be the greatest basketball event of all time. That prediction largely came true. The final averaged 19.5 million viewers. For perspective, the NBA Finals in primetime averaged about half of that. The rules allowed for more defense, there were fewer games, there were fewer commercials, single elimination format, and importantly, players were playing for pride. You could just see it on their faces. It was like they were kids again. It was so refreshing. It's actually more of a risk for an American to play in the Olympics, as their paycheck for a whole 2 months is less than what a lot of these guys make in a game in the NBA. In a way, they kind of just rolled the ball out there and played 40 minutes of basketball for their country, a stripped-down product that was just a better product. The NBA is certainly aware of this challenge. It's a complex issue, but it serves as an example that if power brokers continue to slap fans with wads of $100 bills, briefcases of $100 bills, interest will eventually decline.
Pro wrestling learned that lesson. NASCAR learned that lesson. I'd love for college football not to learn. We cannot just piss on these people forever and tell them it's raining. We can get away with it for a little while because they're not going anywhere. We can't do it forever.
For a few minutes, think of this funny-shaped ball as a needle, helping weave a piece of fabric, a large piece of fabric in sporting Americana. Add this funny-looking ball to this industry, and what do you have? You have a socio-economic phenomenon called football.
Some people think that college football is immortal. And in a way, it's impressive how successful it's been despite a lack of leadership, a clear monopoly that violated the rights of young men for decades. But just because capitalism is involved now doesn't mean that people can't make bad decisions. We cannot forget about the Pullmans. This is more than just another sad story about another small town. The majority of college football fans are not at top 25 programs. That should tell you a lot. Such places are vital threads in America's fabric and in the sport. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe if you haven't.